Last time on Rettals Pub.
Thought so. That's me without my meds. Oh, this is smooth. And then
this is not gonna be. This is gonna be. I'm sorry, guys. I don't even know what we're gonna call these episodes. That may be the shotgun approach or something, because both he and I are gonna be all over the place. Like, he normally keeps me straight on something, and this time we're both.
Just so everybody sees. So I have a portfolio here, and these are notes that I maintain. And I try.
He wrote those today. I watched him do it.
I try to keep an outline, and then as the podcast progresses, I take notes along this. But Nathan is like a Barrett automatic rifle, right? And just
I don't know that Barrett has an automatic rifle.
Browning,
a bar,
yeah, right? Pow,
yeah.
pow, pow, pow. So
he's not a weapons guy.
I'm not. I'm a lover. Right.
That's way more than I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Here are your hosts, Nate and Mason.
So this is not that explicit. So I try to take notes and then try to rein in the conversation, but it never, right? It never.
No, I take off.
It never happens. So anyway, I study philosophy. I love studying religions. I think religions are fascinating. So my primary ones that I will review is Buddhism, Christianity, of course, the different sects of Christianity, Islam. Islam is very interesting. But the religion or the practice, let me just say that, the practice that actually set a root within me was heathenry. Heathenism?
Heathenry.
Heathenry?
Yeah, you had it right.
Heathenry. I love the heathen practice. It's a scary-ass religion. If you do the past, you're right, back in the days, right?
It was. I think it's scary because it's not. It's if I'm going down a rabbit hole, we have Western civilization, which has made everything nice and clean and pretty. I don't think it's necessarily scary unless you've been stuck in the nice, clean, and
Correct.
pretty. In the Christian, choir laden, nice pews and all that shit. Then you start seeing somebody sacrificing chickens and shit. Yeah, it's gonna be scary. And they don't sacrifice chickens. I don't actually think.
They burn people at the stake.
Yeah, they
right?
burn people at the stake. I follow several heathenry people.
Yes.
I mean, it's funny, but yeah, I won't say how I came across heathenry. I came across it a very roundabout way.
Nathan came about it from watching the television show Vikings.
I did not.
That's what it was.
It's a great show, though. But no, that's not where I came to.
It was. Don't let him lie to you.
I did like the storyline.
He loved the aesthetics and the costume and the cosplay,
yeah.
right?
I did like in that movie or that show the story of the Christian guy that was captured by the pagan, and then he reminded me of even though I wasn't Christian. Yeah, even though I wasn't Christian at the time, he reminded me of where I was as I was coming along, to where he was struggling with that fight between Christianity and paganism because he loved both. Yeah. I came about it a different way, a roundabout way, through various things. I even reached out to some local areas to even before I had my awakening, to begin to understand the religion. Not because I wanted to practice spirituality, but because I was intrigued by the complete human aspect of it. I guess part of it that drew me was the drawing you back to earth. Mm-hmm. It's not this found in heaven with the golden streets and the pearly gates and all that stuff. It was real, everyday worship of the things that you can put your hands on,
yes,
as well as other things, but a lot of it was very much about the living things of the world, as opposed to some hidden meaning behind things, and
where we have to eisegesis the text, where we have to pull out something from the text.
Yeah, it was just, and it's still that way.
Or exegesis.
Yeah, exegesis. I don't know.
Eisegesis is where you take. Okay, I'm going to interrupt. Eisegesis is where Christians take their opinion and shove it in the book.
Oh, you mean like all of them?
Yeah, and then force the book to back up their philosophy, right? Exegesis is where you pull from the text and what is the context, what is the writer saying. So yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I wanted to rant on that for a second.
Yeah. No, I mean that's what intrigued me about paganism or heathenry is the human element of it, the earth, it's almost like dirty, like it's not clean. It's and it was very much available to your normal. It's almost the best way I can explain it is that it is very much how I naturally feel.
Yes.
And I think that's what appealed to me about it. Like, I didn't even believe in any of that, in anything, really. And paganism somehow still reached to me because it was just, that made a lot of sense to me, even as an atheist, to do some of those things and those, understand. And granted, I'm not a pagan in the sense of I know everything there is to know. I just know that it reached to a piece of me that Christianity never reached. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is because, Jesus loves you, but Odin wants you to grow the fuck up. It made it more human and real. It wasn't esoteric.
Yes.
In the true sense of the word. Now, sometimes it is. Sometimes there's some things you come across. It's like you really got to think about it, try to figure it out. But for the most part, it's pretty much just in your face what it is. Yes. And so, anyway, I know
what I enjoyed about it. What the situation that woke me up to heathenry was I downloaded some free books off of Kindle, which is the Norse mythology stories, and it was a kid's book, is what it was. And I read the portion where Odin sacrifices. He gives his eye for knowledge, and then he impales himself on the tree, and the text says that he sacrificed himself to himself so that he may gain the knowledge, right? And to sacrifice oneself for yourself so that you can gain knowledge, just like it exploded within me. And that's what anchored me into the mythology and the stories and the practice of heathenry.
Well, what I like about that story is we talked several episodes ago about the thread that goes through all religions to an extent. And if you're looking at, the way I believe now, which I don't fit probably in any kind of dedicated religion in certain ways, but the understanding of samadhi is very much kind of where I'm at. This understanding that I don't necessarily have to sacrifice myself physically. It's more of this ego-based thing that I have that you really don't sacrifice. You just weaken. And it's the same thing. You fast so you can weaken it's no different than what Paul would say. And, we get the flesh under control. I don't see the flesh as what everybody else seems to think the flesh is. I see the flesh as that thing in me that makes, that is prideful. And Christians will agree with that. Pride goes before destruction and haughty spirit before a fall, right? And so I look at that as not what is flesh. Most people think of it as carnality, and I don't see it as carnality. I see it as this being that sits on top of my spirit, and we've had this conversation in the past, and this on this podcast, where this being that sits on my past, anything that I do with rules and regulations and community guidelines is not done spiritually. Mm-hmm. It's most often done so that my ego is in control.
Yeah.
And it feels good. And then I do these fastings and these prayers and these things, these rituals that we do within Christianity or Islam or any of them, any religion. We do these rituals that we perform. Most often they're not actually weakening the flesh, the ego. They're actually strengthening it because I'm doing it for a purpose. Part of samadhi is that you don't worry about meditation and you don't worry about these things that, and I believe in meditation. I think we're going to talk about meditation later today or in a future episode, which will be recorded today.
A shotgun episode.
And this whole thing may be shotgun all over the place. Anyway, so, this understanding that samadhi is we cease doing things. It's the cessation of the actions.
Yes.
And it becomes the implementation of the being.
Yep.
And so then, if you are being right now, existing presently and mindfully,
mindfulness.
That's the point. the result of that is that you will likely meditate, and you will likely fast, and you will likely do those things. But those things are not to keep your ego under control. It's to exist and to remember to be present and mindful about your life right now. Yeah. And I was telling my wife last night, we were talking about some of this, and I said, this understanding of ordered steps and these things that we need to learn because our soul has set those steps before us. I don't remember the last time I had anxiety or depression because I'm at the point now to where, and not that I've made it, I've not ascended, right? But I'm at the point now to where 90% of the time I can walk down the road of my life, and when things are blowing up, I'm still like, you know what? I'm just going to be present and mindful, because if I'm mindful, then I don't know. I'm understanding that triggered me for some reason. I'm mindful as to why, and then I don't react to that. I allow that to go. Then my ego doesn't take place.
That's right.
So ego to me equals the flesh in Christianity. Yes,
I agree with that. It's funny you called. You spoke about the common thread. The other day, I was listening to a heathen and on YouTube. And he just dropped this random fact. It was just like, and he just went on, right? And he mentioned how Baldur is the common thread, right? So when you look at Baldur, you can look at Jesus. Do you know the story of Baldur?
No.
So sit back, little boys and girls, and let me tell you the story of Baldur.
He just got condescending right there, yeah.
So Baldur is the most beautiful, right? Is the most beautiful, the most compassionate. Everybody loved Baldur, and he had a enchantment placed on him, and the enchantment was that he could never die. He could never be killed, right? So the gods in Asgard would play a particular game. They called it a game, right? And they would sit Baldur in the throne room, right? Whatever, and they would throw spears at him. They would throw axes at him, and arrows. Right? I had to think about it. They'd shoot arrows at. Now let me reverse back. So Frigg, Odin's wife, right? She's the one that put the enchantment on Baldur, and she made every natural thing to swear that they would not kill Baldur. So iron, wood, stone, whatever, water, right? Everything promised that it would not kill Baldur. So whenever something was thrown at him, shot at him, whatever, then it would remember the promise, and it would not hit Baldur. It would not kill Baldur. The only thing that she did not approach was a thistle. And the thistle was on the crevice, was on the side of a cliff, right? And Loki is always involved in everything, right? Loki's always doing things.
He's always causing problems.
So they would play the game. They would set Baldur up, and he would stand there, and they would shoot arrows at him. They would throw knives at him. They would try to hack him with a sword, and everything would, kind of like magnets, that would repel, right? And this went on for a time, and then Loki, he began to search for anything that did not swear to Frigg that it would not hurt Baldur, right? And he finds this little bush, and it says, no, I was never approached, right? So he creates an arrow out of this bush and then brings it to Baldur's brother. Now, my mind's not working clearly right now, right? So Baldur's brother was blind, and it was Loki's intent for the blind brother to shoot an arrow at Baldur, and in hopes, whatever, that it might miss, whatever. But the arrow struck and killed Baldur. right? And then there was the big funeral pyre, right? Everybody's crushed. Everybody's devastated because the kindest, most beautiful god is now dead, who shouldn't have died, right? And to this day, there's a celebration of Baldur's funeral, right, where they enact it. And so when you think back, you look at Jesus as being the compassionate and the most kind and the most precious person to ever live. And then to have a piece of wood, right, for him to be hung on a piece of wood and be buried, right? So a lot of people assume or will compare Jesus and Baldur as the same. And the theory goes and the prophecy goes that Baldur will return from the dead.
So it's like the rapture kind of stuff.
So it's like the rapture.
Yeah.
So no matter how you look at it, you're still going to see...
There's threads. I mean, all the way through. Thread. So, you know, it's just... I don't know why people have to fight over that shit. Just believe what you're going to believe and let people...
Aggression is unnecessary. I think aggression is diabolical.
Well, you know, there's this understanding that it's amazing to me that we still fight over that stuff when there are real things that probably need to be fought about.
Yes,
real things. And so
we've got homeless.
Yeah,
right. We've got poverty. We've got starvation. We've got disease running rampant. But no, we're too busy discussing why you can't wear a teal green shirt on picture day.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
Stupidity.
You know, and I'm about to go down a road. You just kind of reminded me that something I've been really pondering lately has nothing to do with spirituality, although my spirituality is probably influencing in it to an extent. But, you know, you and I have for years had the conversation of anarchism and anarchism capitalist, to be specific. I'm still that for the most part.
Yes.
The problem I have these days is that everyone sees our current system as capitalist, and it's not. You know, I look at, I'm a manager in my current job, and I watch these young people who are in their early 20s, primarily, that report to me. I mean, my oldest employee is 24, so it ranges anywhere from 21 to 24.
Wow.
And I watch, especially these days with inflation so bad and all that stuff, and I've got one person who's working two jobs, you know, because they're trying to pay off some debt so they can actually live a little bit more free, you know, and you've got all this situation, and it makes me, my spirituality has become such that I'm like, if I feel compassion or concern for these people, for these young people who are struggling, maybe it's they made wrong decisions, sure. Maybe they're not as financially astute as they should be, maybe, but they're in their early 20s.
Right.
And 99% of those people in the early 20s are not financially astute.
Correct.
I wasn't, you weren't.
No.
You know, I think the Duke is, but he's the exception to the rule, not the rule. And so, you know, I can't help but think that if I'm ever able to run my own company, you know, I think it's incumbent upon me as the owner of the business to make sure that my people are able to live. And I hate these phrases that the left comes up with, living wage and these sorts of things, just because of what it indicates. It indicates that those who are in power, all of them are in somehow cahoots to hold the man down, you know, to hold the little man down. And in some ways, I think that's true when you start looking at some of these big companies. You look at BlackRock and Vanguard, who own more companies than the GDP of the U.S. by a long shot. So they've actually put themselves into a position where they're more powerful than governments across the board, and they can influence. So if you look at a lot of the things that's going on in these days, go look at who owns the companies. I'm willing to bet 99% of the time BlackRock and Vanguard own them. So they're influencing these problems that we see. BlackRock, I know for sure, I heard about them several years ago. I was a real estate agent. They would come into these brand new subdivisions, buy every house in the subdivision to then lease out. What that does is they would offer really good money for every one of those houses, more than what they're worth, which drives the price up, which makes it impossible for these 22, 23, 24-year-olds to actually go buy a brand new home.
Yeah.
And so now a house that would have 5 years ago cost 110, 120, now it's 250. And with inflation and getting so bad and the lack of pay following it, and that's expected to an extent. None of these young people are going to be able to afford to actually own their own home.
Right.
To actually own their own piece. And see, this is where the paganism comes out for me. To actually own their own piece of land where they can put their blood, sweat, and tears into that piece of land and it is theirs.
Yes.
And then you look at Papa on mom's side.
Yeah.
You know, he had 40 acres. Now all the brothers and sisters are dead. Our aunts and uncles,
Yeah.
and mom, that land is likely going to be sold out from under us.
Probably. Yep.
You know, and so there is no tie to the land anymore. And while I'm not necessarily a true conspiracy theorist in the true sense of the word, you can't tell me that there's some plan behind that. And so my spirituality is such now that I'm like, no one person should have that much power. No one company should have that much power. And the only way they have that much power is because they incorporate. If we were a true capitalist nation society, there would be no such thing as corporations. And so you as an individual are going to be held accountable for the shit you pull, as opposed to, well, that's my corporation, I can bail on it, and that corporation will take the brunt, and then I can take my golden parachute and bail. You know, and that's a long ways away from where I was a year and a half ago.
When you talk about the financial status that we're in, the financial conflict that we're in, we are made up of, we've said it before, we're made up of body, soul, and spirit, right? Mental, physical, emotional, right? So when you have an individual that takes out twice the loan in order to just go to school, and then that person graduates, now they're shouldered with a huge student loan.
Oh yeah, $100,000 easy.
$100,000 easy. And then you put them in an economic situation where they can barely find a job based on that degree, right? And they're living below their degree level, right? You understand what I'm saying? And then you cause it to where they get subpar housing. What you're doing is you are affecting that person physically, emotionally, and mentally, emotionally. No, physically, spiritually, and emotionally.
You're hitting every aspect of that.
Everything, because it all is connected. And if you can keep a person subdued and oppressed, their spiritual connection cannot fly like it should. Right? They cannot spread their wings and become a powerful spiritual being that they were designed by DNA to be.
Because in our freedom, we've become enslaved.
Yes.
We're enslaved to the man, so to speak. And who is a man? It's going to be any number of things.
And why is Christianity so popular in the West? Even within Christianity, even though we have a sense of autonomy, even though we have a sense of political autonomy and political power, the community still has to go to the tiny pope over the church and ask for permission to do things or gain permission to do things. And even that, when you ask for permission to do that, you're still compromising your spiritual connection.
Because you know, I'm very much an individualist. And that's what anarchy is to me.
Yes.
Is this you don't get to tell me what to do.
Yes.
I am my own king. I am my own master. I am my own president. I am my own preacher. I am my own leader. I'm free as an individual outside, but internally, in order to do that, I have to be the most strictest tyrant internally. Right. I have to make sure that I'm following certain ethics. Now, I get to determine what those ethics are, and I think most people will come to the same conclusion that it has to be this certain thing. But in the end, my concern is these young people who I'm Generation X. You're probably what, millennial? You millennial?
I don't want to be called a millennial. I am,
but you're on the cusp, probably.
Yeah.
So you're on the cusp between Generation X and millennial. So that's not a bad place to be.
Up next on Rettals Pub.
But
I'm an elder millennial.
If I'm really, and I hope don't make anybody mad at it. Well, I don't really care if I do or not. If I'm really speaking to, why we go to politics now? That's my fault. Sorry. If I'm really speaking to why I believe we're in this situation, it's purely at the feet of the boomers.
Yes, because they voted party loyalty.
Well, it's more than that. They've taken that the complete freedom that the greatest generation handed them, the generation of World War II, a complete, free, and extremely powerful monetarily or financially, economically system, such as the U.S. in the 50s, in the 60s.
And if you look at it, the spiritual connection of the 50s and the 60s, there was an influx of Eastern mysticism and Eastern philosophy that flooded the United States during the 50s and the 60s.
So what you've got is the boomers came in. They're the kids of the World War II vets and those who went to war and died. But you've got the boomers who have come in and they're purely consumers.